before we start the session. Okay, the recording has started. Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening, wherever you are around the world. My name is Progressive Alaba Awolaja, and I will be facilitating today's wonderful session. If you are not speaking, please mute your microphone. And this is the reason why we disable people's microphone. So I am the Chief Minority Consultant and Goal Risk and Oversight Services in Nigeria. And our role is to support people as it regards governance, internal audit, risk and control. And we use internal audit and standard-based aligned approaches to support organizations. And today's session is titled CI Challenge Exam for Qualified Professionals. What you must know before registering for this interesting certification, and let me say a wonderful certification which I hold, and I know other colleagues also hold the same certification. And another thing that you must understand is that you may notice that we changed the title slightly just because we discovered that the conversation is more global, because initially it was more of ICANN, which is Nigeria, but we realized that the conversation is a global conversation, and because the certification is not actually limited to a specific group again or jurisdiction, so we had to change the title to ensure that everybody's considered in this. Now, the certification actually reflects a global pathway. And we know we have accounting professionals, IT auditors, and experienced professionals across multiple jurisdictions who will be interested in holding the certified internal audit certification through this CI challenge pathway. So I want to establish the fact that this conversation is not local, is not only for ICANN members or for a single body like a CPA body. It is more of a global discussion because it's a new thing that has really happened in the internal audit community to have lots of pathway for this certification. Now, the important thing that we also need to understand is we are not just talking about the eligibility for this session. We are not talking about people being capable to do the exams. The most thing that we understand about this session is that most of us attending this session today, we already have those criteria to join or to go through the certification, through this CI certification pathway. But the real question that we must ask ourselves today is, beyond eligibility to become a certified internal auditor, what does this exam really test? Because I have had experience about people trying to be certified internal auditor, and at the end of the day, they are discouraged because of what they found. And when I discovered these three pathways to joining this certification, I discovered that it is better we have the discussion early, so that when people are registering for this certification, they will know what they need to know before they join. And over the past few weeks, I have engaged many people, many professionals across IT, risk, governance, accounting, internal control, and any form of assurance functions. And these people are considering the challenge pathway. And there's something that keeps coming up, or imagine, we are all eligible. Many are eligible, but it is difficult to find people who are fully prepared for what this exam actually demands. So today, our focus is just going to be on the space between eligibility for CIA certification and readiness for this exam, and the professional gap that often determines success or failure for each of the candidates. And I'm also pleased to inform you that I have a distinguished guest, the person I always call Papa in the profession, Pa Osam Shafi, who will also bring a global perspective, global perspective that is shaped by decades of experience across internal audit, governance, risk control, fraud risk, and even accounting and other areas. So we will need his insights to help us to anchor our discussion, so that we can have a better discussion about how we should actually face this exam, even if we decide to go through that CI challenge part. So I'll be moving on quickly. Thank you very much. Now, let's set the context of this conversation properly. What we are seeing is now a clear shift from what it used to be. The challenge exam is no longer limited to specific professional group or region or body. It has now become a global pathway that is open to accounting professionals, IT auditors, and now experienced practitioners, people who are already experienced in governance, risk and control, and even internal audit without being an accountant or a CISA. So whether you are ACA, CFA, CPA, CISA, ACCA, or you have a significant experience in audit, governance, risk or control, the entry point is now the same for every one of us. And let me mute that participant. I have muted that participant earlier, but I just have to do it again. Okay, now we can focus on the discussion. Just a minute, my slide will return back. Okay. So as I was saying, the entry is the same for every one of us. But there is a critical point that we have to make. While the IIA has expanded the access for people to be able to have this certification, we have to establish the fact that the standard for internal auditing framework, the standard for practicing internal auditing has not changed. Every one of us trying to become a certified internal auditor through this pathway, we face the same exam based on the same internal audit framework, the one we call International Professional Practices Framework, IPPF. And that IPPF has so many components, which is beyond today's discussion, which I will talk about if time permits. Now, this is where many candidates begin to misunderstand the opportunity. People may focus on the fact that they are capable now and they are eligible now, but they may also overlook one critical part of this certification, which is what does this certification actually expect professionals to have. So the real issue is not who can enter the CI certification program again, but what the exam demands once you entered, because you are now eligible. So the important question becomes, what exactly does CI certification challenge test you as a professional? Let's begin to consider this story. Now, we have to address the misunderstanding that shapes how many candidates approach the CIA exam. You might have seen the pass rate of the CIA exam. Don't worry. The issue is always the approach of candidates who are trying to be certified internal auditing. One thing that has become consistent that I hear from CI candidates, which is more of their assumption, there are two in number. The first one is that people believe that the exam simply validates what they already know from accounting background or IT audit. And the second assumption that I know that has always been becoming the major issue is that people believe that because it is a single exam, therefore the exam will be easier, or it is easier. But I want to confirm to you that the two assumptions are understandable. However, they are incorrect. The people may compare the challenge exam based on the exam that they have done, based on their professional certifications. And those certifications, you will discover that structure often reflects the scope of those specific certifications. But here in the CI certification exam, the structure is actually different from what people thought or what people would think it is. The exam is not testing isolated knowledge areas. No. It is testing your ability to apply internal audit thinking across integrated framework. I'm talking about the International Professional Practices Framework, which I've mentioned earlier. So the issue that we have in our hands is not what you know. It is how you apply those things you know within internal audit knowledge life cycle or framework. And this is why neither the two assumptions I mentioned earlier holds, and why a different preparation approach is required if you are interested in this certification based on the new opportunity. Now, let's talk briefly about us, the people that is the faculty in this session, so that we can have a context about who is leading the session and who is helping us to understand more. Now, my work over the past 18 years as an internal audit, governance practitioner, internal control, and the likes, which I refer to governance, internal audit, risk and control, GIARC, has been there as an internal auditor. And I focus on those areas only. And through our professional practice, governance, goal risk and oversight, I believe we have the opportunity to support both people and organization as it regards assurance, advisory, capacity building, and other services, all in alignment with one thing that will become popular or more emphasized in our conversation: international professional practices framework, where we have the global internal audit standards. And a key part of my work that you have to know is helping people and even internal audit functions move from theoretical understanding of concepts, internal audit standards, to practical standard-based application of the things that they should be using in their practice. And that is very important for this session, because the CI challenge is not testing what you know. Once again, it's not testing the things that you know in isolation. It is actually testing how well you can apply the internal audit principles according to the Institute of Internal Audit International Professional Practices Framework in real scenarios, in real audit scenarios. So the perspective I will be bringing today into this discussion is not academic. They are actually grounded in practice, IIA standards-based international frameworks and professional expectations. And now I have to go to the next level by introducing our distinguished guests, who will bring a global perspective into the discussion. Now, let's talk about PAOSA. I want to inform you again that I have a distinguished contributor who will be helping us in this conversation. And it's someone I said earlier on I consider as a father in the profession. He will share his insights from decades of experience across internal audit, fraud, risk, and governance. And like as I fondly call him, PAOSA, we bring over 30 years of global experience, including work with complex organizations like United Nations, USID, is deeply embedded in the professional practice of internal auditing, governance, risk, and control through leadership roles with the Institute of Internal Auditors and the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners. And I have to establish his role too. His role here is very deliberate, is to lead, is to help to enrich the conversation with global perspective, and particularly around expectations and where candidates often misunderstand or underestimate the CIA exam. And this will help us to discuss what we really need to focus on and be able to establish our points in real world professional reality. And let me once again introduce and invite Pa Osam Shafi to share a brief global perspectives on the CI challenge exam. Papa, you are welcome on board. Are you still there? Hello? Hello? Okay. Let's move on. Once he's available, we so that we not waste our time. We allow him to have his perspective again. And this is just about goal risk and oversight, and we can look at that later when we share the presentation slide. Now, let's clarify what the CIA actually represents before we focus on the challenge pathway. The CIA exam is not just an exam structure. It is a framework for internal audit practice across 3 levels. And practically, I brought in a perspective to those 3 levels. And I always say thinking, execution, and leadership. Those are the 3 levels that I know, but you will understand them very soon. Now, we see how these participants again, and I have to disable that microphone finally. Now, the CIA part 1 focus on how internal. Okay, the guest has re-entered. Okay, let me just move on. I will call him back again just for a minute. Let's establish the facts before we call him back again. So, I have said the CI part 1 has to do with how internal auditors think, as well as the global internal audit standards, other framework, independence, objectivity, governance, risk, and control. The CI part 1, which is part of the exam you'll be taking, is about thinking. Now, the CIA part 2 now focus on how you execute internal audit activities. This is where we talk about planning, evidence gathering, and conclusions. Where part 3 now focus on how the internal audit function is led, reporting, communication, monitoring, credibility at board level, and things like that. And that is the reason why I call it thinking, execution, and leadership. Now, so capability in internal audit comes from alignments across these 3 levels that I've mentioned. across thinking, execution, and leadership, not isolated knowledge. Now, the challenge exam, changing the structure of how you take the exam, but not the expectation of the alignment across the 3 levels that I mentioned. The CIA challenge exam now compresses these 3 levels into a single exam, meaning you are now assessed on an integrated application of internal audit thinking, internal audit execution, and internal audit leadership. And this is why the one single exam or the single exam label can be misleading if you are not careful. And this is also why understanding the structure of the exam is now very critical. So the next question will now become, who exactly is this pathway designed for? This CI challenge exam, who is he exactly designed for? Okay, we want to clarify who can access the CIA challenge exam pathway. There are 3 broad entry routes now. The third one was just recently added. First, accounting professionals. ICANN, ACAs, ACCA, CPAs, other accounting bodies, ACAs and CAs, and similar recognized bodies can access this CIA challenge pathway. And the second one is the CISA orders from the information system audit pathway. And the third is the experienced professionals, people who have 10 or more years across internal audit, risk, compliance, control, governance, and the likes. So the entry point is now very broad. But here's the critical point I have to make based on this entry point. Eligibility is based on your credentials or your experience. It is not based on demonstrated internal audit readiness. And that is what we are passing this afternoon. And regardless of how you qualify for this CIA challenge exam, everyone will sit for the same exam. And it is built on the same internal audit framework, IPPF, International Professional Practices Framework. So the different backgrounds that we have, no problem, is the same. Can be many or different. But one thing that we must take out of this discussion is the expectation is the same by the IIA. And that is why many candidates begin to misjudge the CIA challenge exam. So the next step for us is to understand how this exam is structured. How is this CIA exam structured? So we can now clarify the structure of the CIA challenge exam, and we can focus on the fact that you can validate or verify anywhere. The exam is a single paper that consists 180 multiple questions, and you must 150 multiple questions, and you must complete those questions in 180 minutes. So structurally, you will agree with me that it is different from the traditional CIA exams that people are taking, because that one is split into 3 separate parts: thinking, execution, and leadership, which I mentioned earlier. But the difference is only in format. The difference regarding what you will do is just in format, not in scope. And that is because one exam will draw from the full body of knowledge across the CIA Part 1, CIA Part 2, and CIA Part 3. And more importantly, the questions are not organized by part. They are designed to test your ability to apply internal audit concepts, to apply internal audit standards, frameworks in an integrated way. So you are not moving from one section, one part to another. You are thinking across the entire discipline of internal auditing. And this is why the structure can also be misleading at first glance. One exam, but not a small exam. It's a detailed exam. So beyond the structure, there's another limitation or constraint that candidates must understand. And that limitation is time. Time. Now, let's talk about time as it relates to the limitation that I mentioned. You may underestimate that limitation, which I called time. And this is because once you register for the CI challenge exam, you have activated a 180-day eligibility window, a window that you must take the exam. Within that period, that 180 days, you must both schedule and sit for the CI exam. But it is not just about this 180 days thing. The exam is only also delivered during fixed testing windows. The one we always say diet in Nigeria. We have February, June, September, and November. So your actual opportunity to sit for the CIS challenge exam depends on how your eligibility window aligns with the dates in these February, June, September, and November. And more importantly, you must understand that there's no extension. There is no extension for that 180 days. Once you register, you must take. And if that window expires, you can see now. So it is not a flexible timeline for many people because it is a structured, limited, or constrained. It has limitations that requires you to plan ahead. And many candidates will prepare first and think about timing later. I want to repeat again. Many CI candidates prepare first and think about timing later. And that approach does not work in CI challenge. It doesn't. Time must be planned alongside preparation, not after it, not after you have prepared. No, you must look at these windows, look at the opportunities of, within this window, and look at how you will prepare for this exam. I hope now we have understood the limitation regarding this exam, and we know the structure. Let's look at another part. What does this exam actually test, which is more important to so many of us? And this is the most important part of this session now. The exam does not test your qualifications. I have said, and I have to emphasize it, re-emphasize it, that CIA certification exam will test your ability to apply internal audit in practice. And that application of internal audit in practice is according to the IIA's International Professional Practices Framework, which may not be applicable or which may not be used by many auditors. So you cannot depend on you may not depend, let me reframe that, you may not depend on qualifications. So many candidates will come from strong accounting backgrounds, ACCA, CA, CPA, CISA, and they will now assume that that the knowledge they have in those backgrounds will carry them through the certification process. But the fact is that they will help you, but they are not sufficient. That is just the truth. They will help, but they are not sufficient. Because the questions are not asking, what do you know? No. They are actually asking, how would you think and act as an internal auditor in this situation according to the IIA's International Professional Practices Framework, or one of the components of that same framework, which is the Global Internal Audit Standards. And that requires you to align yourself with the International Professional Practices Framework. And that IPPF comprises the Global Internal Audit Standards, the tropical requirements, the global guidance, methodology, and professional judgment as they relate to internal auditing. So familiarity, it may be assumed, but your application will be tested. And this is where the gap appears in practice. CI candidates will regularly or normally rely on their prior knowledge, but the exam requires them to think like an internal auditor across governance, risk, and control. So to better understand this, let's look at how the exam is structured across the internal audit life cycle, which will help us in understanding what we should focus on. How is it structured? The CI challenge exam. The syllabus of the CI challenge exam is organized into 5 domains, A to E. But it is also important for us to understand that these are not separate topics. The 5 domains are not separate topics. They represent the internal audit life cycle, how internal audit is practiced from start to finish according to the IIA's Global Internal Audit Standards. So it begins with professionalism and governance, which sets the foundation, then moves into planning and risk assessment, then followed by engagement designing. Then after that, you have execution, evidence gathering or evidence collection, testing, and analysis. And finally, you will have to report and monitor the outcomes of those engagements according to the IIA standards. So the exam is not testing isolated knowledge areas. The exam is assessing you, is assessing whether you, as a professional, understand how these elements connect and flow together in practice. And this is why candidates must think in terms of process, not in terms of subjects, as you can see for these domains. So we will now focus on breaking these areas down, starting with the foundation, then internal audit professionalism and equality, which is the real foundation for internal auditors. For the people taking side part 1, the 3-part exam, you will notice that you start from part 1, you have internal audit fundamentals, you have ethics and professionalism, then you have governance risk and control, then you have fraud risk and things like that. That is how that one is structured. Now, let's see how everything we have discussed comes together as professionals. What you have here before you is the life cycle, is the internal audit life cycle. How internal audit is actually practiced in real organization. We start from professionalism, and professionalism sets the foundation for the standards, foundation for objectivity, foundation for integrity, independence, competency, credibility, and things like that. They will now move into planning, where risks are identified, engagements are now decided based on those prioritized risk or significant risk. Then from there, we go into the execution, testing, evidence analysis. Then we report. In reporting, this is where insights are communicated to management and the board. Let's say our stakeholders. And finally, monitoring the outcome of those engagements, where we say we have a follow-up actions or things like that, and accountability are now established. Now, notice this loop, the arrow in this diagram. It does not end at monitoring. It feeds back into the next cycle. And this is exactly how the exam is structured, around this continuous integrated process. When you are attempting the exam, it is continuous. So you don't have to wait and say you're waiting for only question on CIA1. No, they are integrated. So you are not being tested in part. You will be assessed across this full life cycle. Now, let's break it down. We want to start with the foundation. The internal audit, professionalism, and quality, which is very important. We have foundation of internal auditing, which is the credibility of internal auditing. The section A of the exam is not theory. It's not just theory. It is more about how or whether the internal audit is positioned in the organization to be trusted and relied upon. The exam will test your understanding of the internal audit mandate, charter, how authority is defined, and the roles of the board and the chief audit executive or head of internal audit department in that environment, in a scenario that is given to you. And there's also a major focus on independence and objectivity. In practice, people mix independence and objectivity together. But in internal auditing, we will say independence is structural, while objectivity is behavioral. Independence is about the internal audit function. Objectivity is about internal auditors. However, when we speak in practice, people interchange these concepts. So you are expected to identify situations where independence may be impaired, whether through reporting lines, scope limitations, or conflict of interest, and understand how to respond appropriately to these impairments or there's another name that I can call it. I just forgot now. So we will now have, we also have another aspect in that exam, the 3 lines model. You must ensure that you recognize the boundaries between audit and management responsibilities. In practice, you will see head of internal audit, risk management and control. In practice, you see titles of CAEs or head of internal audit. You see head internal audit and control, head compliance and audit. This exam will test whether you understand the boundaries as it's related to the 3 lines model. And more importantly, quality assurance. What we call Quality Assurance and Improvement Program, QAIP. Assessment, internal assessment, external assessment, performance metrics. So the fact is that without quality and independence, an internal audit department cannot provide credible assurance. So we can then move to how the internal audit operates, how internal audit plans its work as it relates to the CIA challenge. So, Pa Osam, are you still there? I can allow your microphone for your contribution. I have allowed your microphone. Are you there? You can just unmute before I move on. Are you there? Okay. I have to move on so that because of our time. Now, this is the other part of the exam. The first part that I mentioned is about 20% of the syllabus. This one is 15%. The what do you call it? The section B of the syllabus, because it's a movement. Okay, but Osam, do you want to say something before I continue? I see your chat. I see your response. Just want to allow you to chip in something before I move on. Okay. Okay, no problem. So I said we are moving from foundation to direction. How the internal audit decides what to do and why in the department. Yes, I didn't hear you. I can't hear you. I can't hear you. Please, if you can hear. Yes, you are on mute. You can unmute yourself. Your microphone is working. You can unmute yourself. Is that correct? Okay. We can see your camera. We can see you on camera, but we can't hear you now. Try to speak. No, we can't hear you. We can't hear you. Okay, that's too bad. You can continue to try while I move on. Yes, you are unmuted. You are co-facilitator, so you have the power to even disable and even reject people within the conversation. Try again, sir. That is no. Please, I need somebody to speak to me. I want to be sure that I can also hear every other person in this conversation before I move on. Please try to speak if your microphone is.
Yes, I can hear you, please.
Okay, if you can hear, that means. Okay, thank you very much. So, Pausam, while you try to resolve it, you can go in and come back again. Let's see. Yes. You can end the call, then join again, sir. Thank you. So, I said we are moving from the foundation to how you do the job and why you do the job, what you want to do as an internal auditor. So, the starting point is the audit universe. You have a complete view of processes, risk, regulatory matters, organizational changes. Then from there, you talk about developing your audit. That is where we now talk about risk-based plan, prioritizing what matters most, and updating the plan as risk evolve or risk emerges. So the exam tests how the function is managed, how resources, but because I always tell people that internal CAEs, chief audit executives, are also a human resources manager, because you are the human resources manager of the internal audit function. So how you manage resources, including people, budgeting, technology, and team capacity, capability, and things like that. And how the audit strategy aligns with the organization objectives and stakeholder expectations. So there is also an emphasis on coordination with other assurance providers like compliance officers, risk managers, internal control officers, to avoid duplication and improve the coverage of your audit. Then we can move to the next part of the section B. This is another 20% of the syllabus of CI challenge. And this is where you shift into design thinking, how an internal audit is structured before any testing begins. Before you start testing, verifying transaction and things like that, you have to have an internal audit thinking. The exam now expects you to define a clear objectives, a clear engagement scope based on your organizational strategy, risk imperatives, and your stakeholders' expectation, not just generic audit areas. You must be able to determine the appropriate evaluation criteria, like a standard criteria, like regulatory criteria, as a criteria. So what exactly are you assessing against is the key question. And is this actually relevant and reliable to that objectives and scope of the audit? And we now go from there into another key risk area and controls across different domains: operational audit, financial audit, IT, cybersecurity, fraud, different kind of assurance engagement types that you may need to understand. Culture, we now have organizational culture audit, things like that. So then you now talk about audit procedures. work program to test, control design, control effectiveness, control efficiency. And importantly, you select the right auditor approach and resources, which must be documented too. And this is where many candidates will struggle or struggles, because it requires structured thinking rather than the checklist-based approach or preparations that people are used to. You are now trying to align yourself with an international standards for practicing internal auditing. Now, let's move into the next section, how it is executed. Execution, which is more of what happens during the audit. The exam now tests you how you obtain information, how you collect information, how you gather information. For example, through interviews, through observation, walkthroughs. These are the things that we are familiar with. Data analysis. And more importantly, you evaluate the information. You analyze the information to ensure that they are relevant to the area that you are auditing, the objectives and scope. Now, another matter that is very important is quality of evidence. The exam wants to know whether you know what quality of evidence is. Relevant evidence, sufficient evidence, reliable evidence. Are they reliable? Are they sufficient? Are they relevant? And the key question in this IIA standard is that they will say, if another competent auditor perform the same audit, will they reach the same conclusion? Could another competent auditor reach the same conclusion? So there's a lot that we have to ensure that we align ourselves. We also have another emphasis on data analytics and technology. Technology and data analytics has been part of the IIA standard for so long. You may be an internal audit practice that you are not conversant with data analysis and technology. You are expected to apply analytical procedures, identify root causes, develop well-supported defensible conclusions, and everything must be documented in a clear, structured work papers according to the standards. And this is where audit judgment is much more visible. Then we now move into another area, the results. This is where we talk about impact of what you are doing. Testing how you communicate the results in a way that result is accurate. The result is objective, it's clear, it is timely. Not just writing reports. But the most important thing is ensuring the message is understood and the message is actionable. You are expected to structure your report properly, including your objectives, your scope, your conclusions, your action plans, your recommendations. You must evaluate whether management actions actually address the root cause of the findings, not just the symptoms that you have reported. So we also need to understand another area, which is residual risk. A focus on residual risk and risk acceptance. What happens when management accepts a level of risk that may be unacceptable? And we talk about follow-up and escalation, tracking implementation and taking action when responses are inadequate. So because internal audit is not complete at the reporting stage of the engagement, it is only complete when risks are addressed and when accountability for those risks have been established. So the next thing we do is to connect everything together. Let's connect everything together. Now, just a minute, just to be sure. Just to be sure, okay. Let's connect. Okay. The exam now evaluates internal audit as an integrated professional practice. What we have now, based on all the discussion, from professionalism to monitoring, is not a set of separate topics. It is a single integrated process. So the CIA Challenge exam is designed to assess whether you understand how internal audit works end to end. So you are not just being tested on isolated knowledge of the things that we already know. You are being tested on how well you can connect governance, risk, control, planning, execution, reporting, monitoring into a coherent approach. And that is the shift candidates must make before you join this journey. So you have to shift from studying subject to understanding practice. And that is because in the CI Challenge exam, the questions cut across the domains. They require you to apply judgment across the full life cycle of internal auditing. And this is why preparation must be integrated, not fragmented or separated. And This fact now leads us to another distinction, which we need to talk about: capability versus readiness. This is just to explain why many candidates may struggle. Capability is what you already have: your qualifications, your experience, your technical know-how, your technical knowledge. For many of the participants or the candidates that will be taking this exam, you are strong on that area. But exam readiness is different. Readiness is your ability to apply that knowledge within internal audit framework. I'm talking about using the standards, applying your judgment based on the standards, and thinking across governances and control processes as expected using global frameworks. And this is where the gap exists. Many candidates may assume their capability automatically translates into exam readiness. But the truth is that it does not. Because the exam is not testing what you know in your own domain, in IT domain and other domains. It is actually testing how well you can think and operate as an internal auditor. So your success requires a shift from professional capability to internal audit readiness. And that will now bring us to the critical question: how do you prepare effectively for this shift? Now, okay, let's talk about where gap between capability and readiness becomes visible. Different backgrounds bring different strengths, yes, but the different backgrounds will also bring different blind spots. Let's say for accounting professionals, the focus is often on financial accuracy and reliability of our accounting information or financial information and compliance. But the exam will now require you, the exam will now require you to have a broader view: enterprise risk and control across the organization. That is a shift. For IT auditors now, they have the strength in systems and controls. But sometimes there could be a gap in understanding the full internal audit lifecycle, from planning to reporting and follow-up. And now let's talk about the experienced professional, people who has more than 10 years experience in governance, risk and control and related subjects. They have a practical exposure, and that practical exposure is valuable. But if they do not have a structured methodology that is aligned with the internal audit standards, that experience will not actually translate effectively into success in the exam. And across all the three groups, there is common issue: we are always biased, and that is what I call a domain bias. Every candidate will answer questions based on their background. No. Yes, okay. They will answer questions based on their backgrounds rather than applying internal audit judgment to questions. And that is exactly what the exam is designed to review. So let's ask ourselves the question now: how do you prepare in a way that closes this gap? How? The first thing that you must take is that our eligibility is administrative. Eligibility reflects whether you can actually operate within the internal audit framework, yes. Whether you can apply the global internal audit, whether your qualification or your experience is valid to be able to take this exam. I can say it confirms the criteria to enter the program. But the readiness now is about operating within the internal audit framework, applying the global internal audit standards, exercising judgment according to the global internal audit standards, and thinking across the audit life cycles that we have just discussed. And the problem we have in practice is that many candidates may confuse the two: eligibility, which is administrative, and readiness, which is professional. Candidates may just assume that because they are eligible, they are ready. And this is where the problem begins, the assumption. Because the exam is designed to test your judgment, your professional readiness, not your eligibility, then you have to ask a question, or we have to ask ourselves a question: do I qualify? Do I qualify? Instead of, am I ready to think and perform as an internal auditor? So if it is about qualification, yes, but am I ready to think and perform as an internal auditor according to the IA standard? That's another question that we must all answer. And that is where your preparation now becomes very critical. Now, let's focus on your preparation. First, your preparation must be aligned with the IPPF, most especially the Global Internal Audit Standards, tropical requirements, expectations, internal audit methodology, which we can say is more of the global guidance provided by the IIA. So, aligning yourself with the Global Internal Audit Standards, GIS, which is a component of the IPPF that I've been emphasizing, is the foundation of this exam. Now, let's move to the second part. You need to develop a risk-based thinking. For example, how to identify, how to assess, and prioritize risk within an organizational context. And the third part of your preparation is that your preparation must be integrated. We are talking about governance, risk, control, planning, execution, leadership, reporting, monitoring. All of them must be understood as a connected process. Now, the also part, another part is global frameworks. You need to be familiar with global frameworks, such as COSO ERM, COSO Internal Control Integrated Framework, ISO 31000 2018, and other governance principles, OECD and UK governance code, things like that. Because all of these framework shape how internal audit think, how internal audit evaluate processes, activities, or subject matters in organizations. And another important thing that we must understand here, you must focus. Another thing is focusing on application of judgment, not memorization. The exam is more about application and judgment than memorization. Nobody's going to ask what is this. So, like I said, it is not about how much you know. It is now about how well you can apply what you know within the internal audit framework. So, we can now move to the next question, which is how should you structure your preparation to achieve this CIA challenge? How? How long should preparation take? In practice, you must see estimates such as 80 to 180 preparation study hours. For example, that is provided by Becker, which Becker is a provider of exam review material. And it's also the official IIA partner on this exam. This 180, 100 study hours is just a baseline. It is not a standard. And one thing you must understand about this 100 study hour is that there's an assumption, because this just assumes that you have a level of power familiarity with internal audit concepts and standards. Assumption. But in reality, preparation time will vary. How long it will take me to prepare for a CI challenge will be different from how you will prepare. So the most important thing is that it all depends on your exposure to the IIA's International Professional Practices Framework, IPPF. It depends on your experience, the quality of your internal audit experience. It depends on your ability to apply internal audit concepts and your discipline and available study time. When I was doing my CI exam, I had enough time because I joined staff bus 6:45 a.m. in Lagos. So, and I get home 5 p.m. in the evening. So I had the time. But not everybody has that time, even in Lagos, Nigeria. So two candidates can prepare for this exam differently, and they will see us arrive at readiness at the same different points. But what is more important to you as a CI challenge candidate is the depth and quality of preparation, not the number of hours. And when you consider the breadth of suggested 2,000 practice questions that Becker said they have for you to practice, then you will now understand that this is an integrated content. This makes everything clear. And the clarity is that it is not a light exam. So the next question is not how fast you can prepare, but how well you can prepare and become a global certified auditor. Now, internal auditor, I mean. So this is where you need to be deliberate. My advice for CI challenge candidates now, let's say it clearly. Based on my own experience, it is very simple. Prepare before you register. Yes, start preparing for your CI challenge before you now put your money in. And one of the effective way to do this is to build your foundation you can use the CI three-part structure resources. And this is not just because, it's not because you are writing the three parts, but because The three parts reflects how internal audit knowledge is organized. You remember that in your own exam, they have already assumed a lot of things that you should already know. So how you prepare now, you can start your preparation earlier. You can go through formal training, no problem. If you have a CIA1 training, you can go. CIA2 training, you can go to those training separately, just to ensure that you align yourself with what is expected. Okay, you know what is there. You can go for training. You can go for guided learning, webinars, discipline self-studies. As long as the materials are aligned with internal audit standards, do it. Use it to prepare. The main goal at this stage is familiarity and understanding. You need to be familiar. Get familiar ahead of time, because that 180 days may be short for you by the time you register for the exam. Or by the time the review material they give to you is over 700 pages or 500 pages, you feel this is too much. And you know, coupled with our responsibilities as professionals at our workplaces, you feel, how much time do I have to read all of these materials? That is why you can start your preparation before you register ahead of time. Now, we spoke about familiarity and understanding. And that familiarity and understanding is more about how internal audit works according to the standards in the full life cycle that we saw earlier. And once you build that foundation, or you have that foundation in place, the challenge exam becomes an integration exercise rather than a discovery process. Don't just go and start by discovering new things. First, familiar yourself and understand a lot of things that you should know. And the reason, and this actually matters, because once you register, the 180-day starts clicking. The clock starts immediately. So preparation should not begin after registration. You should already be in place before you enter the exam window. Focus on, how do I get myself familiar or understand with what all of this expectation earlier, so you can look at the window you want ahead. Start your preparation ahead. So by the time the window is open for you to register, you have already prepared to a certain stage, and you are not discovering new things anymore. Now, let's discuss how we approach the preparation based on the things that we have observed from the candidates all over the world. And you must understand that the focus is not covering the entire syllabus again. It is on addressing the internal audit knowledge gaps that many qualified professionals may have. That gaps is just as a result of the IPPF. Maybe we are not familiar with some things in the IPPF. Maybe we are not using the standards. There is a knowledge gap, and we should focus on those gaps. And from my own experience, these gaps are typically around internal audit governance. You know, I argue a lot with people concerning independence and objectivity, things that we shouldn't be arguing about, because there's a gap. Risk-based planning, methodology. For example, now that methodology that I've been talking about, methodology in IIA's Global Internal Audit Standard means policy, processes, and procedures of the internal audit function. Now, when you see methodology, you think it's a regular methodology. That is what we are saying. And then reporting. So the approach is structured around the GIS, Global Internal Audit Standards, and how internal audit is actually practiced. Now, we can talk about risk-based thinking, how to prioritize, how to assess, and how to design your audit work, how it is structured. Then we talk about exam thinking. Exam thinking is different from I know it. We can discuss how questions are framed, how to apply judgment within internal audit context. So the preparation should actually not be about volume. It should be about targeted preparation that builds your own readiness where it matters most, which I mentioned earlier on about the knowledge gap. Now, let's talk about how we can support candidates at a high level. Let's not deceive ourselves. It is not easy to put professionals together to study or to train them on the CI challenge exam for the whole syllabus. It's going to take months. And that is the reason why I'm saying high level. Because the objective is not to replace your personal study. It is actually to provide a structure and direction, particularly around internal audit applications that we have already said is a gap, or that could be a gap in your own practice. Then we can now focus on helping candidates to build their own readiness, understanding how to apply standards, how to think through exam scenarios, and how to approach questions with clarity, how to strengthen your risk-based thinking, how to help you align with international audit or international audit standards, the internal audit methodologies, policies, processes, and procedures, and how to help you improve your decision making in exam conditions. So we also help candidates to understand how the exam is structured, so they are not approaching it blindly. So the role here is more of support to guide, not to overwhelm you with information. And ultimately, the responsibility for preparation remains with you as the candidate. Why our own role is to help ensure that your effort is focused on the right areas. And with this, let's ask ourselves a critical question. Now, the question is the exam a shortcut? No. The CI challenge exam is not a shortcut. It is a structured single exam, but it does not compress the full contain the full CI 3-part syllabus. This one now compresses the full CI body of knowledge into one assessment. So the scope of the exam is not actually reduced. It's not reduced. The expectations is always the same for every CI candidate. You will be tested on your ability to apply audit principles across those life cycle that we know, from governance to every one of those things we have discussed. And that one will now requires you to have a standard-based judgment, integrated thinking, and professional discipline. So the real question is not whether the pathway is shorter. It should be whether you are ready to operate at that level. And if you approach the exam with the understanding, your preparation, and your outcome, then you have a different result. And this is where I will be thanking you for taking the time to listen and to be part of this discussion. Thank you very much. And we can enable microphones here to have a discussions. You can ask questions and we will be here to answer. Now, let me close this before you ask your question. Before you ask this question, let me close this. And the closure is this: Are you eligible or are you ready? Are you eligible or are you ready? Because most of you already meet the eligibility requirements or criteria. The path is clear for you. But what truly determines your outcome is your readiness, your ability to apply internal audit principles, think within the IPPF, and respond with sound professional judgment. You know, everything will be discussed. We have discussed are the points to that distinction between eligibility and readiness. So before you register, just take a moment to assess yourself honestly. So not just what you know, but how prepared you are to apply it in the way the exam requires. Because that difference really matters. Eligibility or readiness. This is what actually determines your success. Now, I'm seeing some charts. If you want to speak, you can indicate so that we can enable your microphone. That is very important. If you want to speak, I hope if you can raise, you can show, indicate. And I'm also looking at the chat. Let me see the questions in the chat. Let's see the questions that we have in the chat before we close. I'm through just to attend to your queries. Okay, let me see where we start. I'm starting. Okay, question. Yes, immediately after this discussion, we will share these presentation documents inside this chat. So I don't have to send it to your, because you registered, everybody will still have access to this chat on your Teams. So I will just drop this presentation document inside this chat so you can just download it from there. So everybody will have the presentation document. And the recording also, we will put the recording maybe on YouTube or any public space that people can go and watch there. So the cost implications, okay. Somebody is asking for the cost implication for the CIA challenge. Okay, let me just, let's attend to it one by one. Let's do this way. Let's attend to the people in the chat first. Then I will now attend to people that are indicating with their hands up. So somebody said, what is the cost implication? Now, the cost implication for IA members for IIA member, let me just give you facts, is over $1,200. But non-members will pay more than that. So I always advise people to at least join the IIA chapter in your region. That is my own advice. So it's $1,200 plus for IIA members and $1,500 plus for non-members. Any other questions? So I am eligible as of today, but not ready. Okay, somebody said I am okay, no problem. We know. Another one, how effective is the IIA learning platform for a candidate preparing for CIA Part 1? We are talking about CIA Part 1 as a CIA challenge, not actually Part 1, but let me just answer it. It is IIA platform. I don't know the learning platform you are talking about, whether it is Becker. If it is Becker, I said earlier on that IIA has collaborated with Becker and they provide review material. So it's a good material, and that is what we also we train people on those parts, the single parts, and we also provide the resources that they need for those single parts. Thank you very much. Another one, how do we get study materials and past questions? Okay, if you are talking about past questions and study materials, you have to buy. You will have to buy study materials because these are copyright materials. We have so many materials, GLEM, PLC, ORG, Becker in collaboration with IIA. So, but for our CIA candidates, we provide the majority of the resources. So we provide the classes, the sessions, and also provide enough resources for them to prepare to pass for the exam. So that is our in-house stream. Thank you. Now, is there a dedicated study materials for the challenge? Yes. Once you pay, IIA will give you material. Yes. IIA will provide the materials for you to read, and I think it's digital materials, and I'm not sure it's a PDF material also. So another one, approved challenge. Can I change it to the 3 parts? That is another key question. You can change, but it will cost you anyway. How do we register for the IIA membership in Abuja? Okay. What I'm going to do after this session, I'm going to share IIA membership registration details in this chat. So watch out in this chat. Although we have our global internal audit governance and control community platform, I will share that link so you can get more updates from me. So, but everybody focus on this chat. Once we are through, you will still get updates from this chat and you can respond. So now, do you offer tutorial services for the share challenge? Yes, we will do that. We will share our schedule very soon and you'll see it. So I will share the link to our community, WhatsApp community, so that you can get updates. Okay. How much is the CI challenge exam for members? I said over $1,200 just over. So, but people will pay more. Now, I'm still seeing a hand up. I will allow your microphone. So I have allowed your microphone now. You can speak. Goswe, Mr. Goswe, you can speak. I've allowed your microphone. You can unmute yourself and speak. Any other questions before we close? It's so unfortunate that we are unable to have Pa Osam to speak with us because of technical issues. I'm not happy that I'm the only one that spoke at the end. So, but it's a technological problem, and it just sometimes we face that kind of things in an online webinar. So, any other questions? I'm still looking at the people. If you have questions, I want to respond. I will mute you. Goswe, I've already enabled your microphone, and no other person. Then we can end the conversation. Okay, you let's watch out for the chat.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Can I go ahead?
So you can go ahead now.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much. Quite an engaging and insightful, discussion. I just want to have a clarification. I want to be sure that my understanding aligns with the actual facts. When you mentioned about the dieting period, the registration periods windows of February, June, September,
yes.
November, I think I'm right.
Yes.
Okay, now.
And November.
So what that means is that you must register this exam within this month, which the IA will provide the period. Then when you register it, you have 180 days to write this, to schedule a write exam. Is it what you mean?
Yes, you have 180 days. So the window for you to register will be opened, and those windows will now be in alignment with the time for exam period. So the exam will be taken in a specific month, but windows for you to register will fall. The 180 days will fall within those exam period. So, for example, now they will open for you. Let's say they open for you in February of a year. So 180 days within that February will fall into a specific month that everybody must take the exam. Am I making sense? So
Sure.
for each year, there will be opening for you to come and register. And within that opening window, that window that you register, we always fall. The 180 days, we always fall into, let's say, diet in Nigerian context. Am I making sense now? It will fall into
now let's
specific months.
Let's say I want to register in November window.
Yes.
November 2026 window.
Yes.
So what does that mean? What that means is that I should be expected to write the exam before schedule write the exam before
180 days, yes.
March around.
Yes.
March the exam of 2027.
Yes, the exam will fall into that. That is how it is.
Now, I want to ask the question again.
Okay.
This challenge.
Yes.
Is it only for this year, or is it something that will be repetitive every year?
It's every year.
Okay.
It's every year. It's continuous. The only one that is not continue is this. Okay, just a minute. Let me attend to Pa Osam. Pa Osam says, it needs to be unmuted from my end. Let me try again. I have allowed your microphone. Then you now unmute yourself. That is it. That is it. Your microphone is allowed, sir. I don't know what. Just a minute. Let's resolve this issue. Pa Osam need to ask his global perspective, and we are really struggling. Just a minute. Your camera is allowed. Your microphone is allowed. We don't know what is actually happening. So
now
you can speak. Thank God. Thank God.
What did you do?
I don't know. So let me rest. So participants, let me rest and let me leave this discussion for Pa Osam to contribute before I continue. Thank you very much.
You've been blocking me out.
Not really so, sir. Okay, you have the floor, sir.
Well, I must say it was a great presentation as usual. You have covered every single angle of it. I don't know what else to add. The only thing I would like to add, and from being also an external quality assurance reviewer, is the integration part. Is not a single topic or a single area of test. It is integrated, and it tests your whole understanding of how internal audit works on a strategic level, on the implementation level, on the reporting level, on the communication level. I must say, I've seen a lot of internal auditors, and that you think you understand how internal audits work from being an internal auditor. And that's not the way you're tested. You have to become familiar with the standards, as Alava correctly said. And it's not only what the standards say. Read between the lines, read the guidance. You have to actually think beyond what it says. All right. So we talk about the scope and objectivity, as Alava very clearly said. Scope, you have to really understand what the word scope means. And you have to really understand what the word objectivity means, because I see a lot of internal audit planning and programming, and yes, and the practice advices, as somebody said in the that's Alaba. All right, so that's exactly, to be ready. You need to understand these things. Which is different from eligibility. All right, I can say I'm eligible to take it, but am I ready? I will have to come back to every single advice that Progressive Alaba gave in the presentation to really come down to the point to say, yes, I'm ready to take the challenge exam. And it's not simple, and it's not simplified. It's just an integrated, comprehensive exam that tests you and test your knowledge and thinking and the way you understand the impact from A to Z in one go. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Papa. We have waited long for that. We appreciate that. And please, if you are talking about the pricing, I have added the pricing into the chat. Have you seen the pricing? The fees for the exam. I have added it to the chat. You can just copy from the chat. And like I said earlier, I am also sending before we end the conversation, I just want to also include the the presentation document so that we can use it on our own. So if there's no question, I just want to appreciate every one of us for the patience, for all that you have done, for being patient, for waiting and things like that. Thank you very much for joining us. We hope to, if you are interested in continuing this conversation, please, you have the link to our WhatsApp community. Please just try to join those WhatsApp community. You will get my direct contact from those community immediately. You will have a discussion around what you are expected to do as a CI candidate. So thank you very much. Have you seen the presentation materials? We may send mail for people who didn't join. We may send mail so that we can send them this presentation material. But I think people that joined, we see the material where it should be. Thank you very much. Any other questions? I can now end the okay, somebody is Oluwatosin Ayola. I'm seeing your hand before I close this event. Oluwatosin Ayola, I can see your hand up. I have enabled your microphone. Let's hear you before we...
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Alaba and Mr. Osam for this session. I think this is more to Mr. Alaba. The question I wanted to ask, I'm not sure, maybe you mentioned it or I missed it out, is that are you planning to organize the CIA Challenge Exams tutorial anytime soon?
Yes,
then secondly,
yes.
when will that be? I think that's important. Then secondly,
Yes.
In terms of materials, right? Because for this type of exam, it's important for you to start reading. You can't just say until maybe they want to do it in August or you need to start reading, because I don't think you will read this in 2 weeks and you go to write such exam, right? Anyway, depending on capacity anyway. So I think those are my two questions. Number one, are you planning and when is it going to happen? Then in terms of material, what do you suggest? Becker, Glam or Hawk, right? What do you really think should someone be focusing on at this point in time? Thank you.
So let's share this generally.